How's it going, and welcome to No Fun Allowed, and today we are going to be making a character in Old School Essentials. My philosophy when it comes to picking up a new game system is to just make a character, run them through a game, whether that be just some combat or a single session, whatever the case may be. That is, in my opinion, the best way to start playing a game. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Let's start with making our character. What is the first step to making a character in Old School Essentials? First off, we roll ability scores. Character ability scores are determined by rolling randomly. Roll 3d6 for your character's charisma, constitution, dexterity, intelligence, strength, and wisdom. Alrighty, 3d6. What's the worst that could happen? I'll be using Roll20 for this example, but of course you can pick up anything and it'll be just fine. So we mentioned that we're rolling 3d6 before. Normally what that means is you can roll the dice and assign the stats wherever you desire. For this series, I will just be rolling down the line. So the first dice I roll is going to be for strength, the second one is going to be for intelligence, etc., etc. Without further ado, let's see what horrible creation we come up with. Our first stat is a 4 in strength. Oh boy, we have a 16 intelligence, a 14 wisdom, a 9 dexterity, a 12 constitution, and a 12 charisma. This is an interesting character. Plugging in those stats, we see that we've got a nice little array here. We've got the polarizing 4 and the awesome 16. Pretty awesome stuff here. But as we head back to the rules, we can see here that you could potentially have a subpar character. If you roll a character with a very poor ability scores, for example an 8 or less in every single score, or an extremely low rating in one ability, the referee may sometimes allow you to discard the character and start again. So with this scenario here, with my particular character, I wouldn't allow a reroll because you have an incredibly awesome stat and actually really good stats across the board. But if I were to see someone that rolled nothing but 8s and below, or only middling scores and just a whole bunch of crap scores, then for sure I would allow a reroll. The second portion to making our character now is choosing the class. So, of course, with our stat line, there are some things we're probably not going to be. We're not going to be a fighter, we're not going to be an elf, we're not going to be a dwarf. So let's look at some of the things we could potentially become. So the very first class here we have Cleric. Cleric I could become because I have a 14 wisdom, so that's not bad. But I think that there is a potentially better class that we could become. I think the class that this character is going to become is a magic user. And the reason for that is because intelligence is good, and guess what? The strength we don't care about. We're not going to be stabbing people. The only weapons that we could be using as a magic user would be a dagger, but with a 4 strength and a not great dexterity, I'm not too concerned. I'm going to be sitting in the back and I'm going to be casting spells, and with my charisma I have a decent amount of retainers, so I am not going to be in the front line. So with that, let's just change our class over there to magic user. Perfect. Now for number 3 on creating our character here is adjust ability scores. Optionally, the prime requisite of your character, determined by your chosen class, in our case the magic user, may be raised by lowering other non-prime requisite ability scores. For every 2 points of which an ability score is reduced, 1 point may be added to your prime requisite. The following restrictions apply, and this is the big deal. Only intelligence, strength, and wisdom may be lowered in this way. No scores may be lowered below 9, and thieves may not lower strength. So the thieves, that doesn't matter. But the real matter here is that we could only decrease our intelligence, strength, and wisdom, and we're not decreasing our strength because our strength is already so low, we cannot lower it below 9. But would you look at that, I got extremely lucky in this case. I've got wisdom to spare. So should I choose to, I could in fact lower my wisdom by 2 to increase my intelligence by 1, which in this case, I'm probably willing to do so. The reason for that is because if I get my intelligence higher to the 17s and to the 18s, that is going to bump my stats up from a measly +2 to that beautiful +3. It is sad to see a higher stat go down. We did have a wisdom of +1, but hey, that means our intelligence is through the roof and we are the smart ones in the party. Number 4, note ability score modifiers. Now that your character's ability scores are fixed, make a note of any associated bonuses or penalties consulting the charts on page 6. So thankfully I'm on Roll20 and it just does it for me, but for those of you that need to know, it is located here on this page. We can see here that a 9 through 12 is a +0. We can see that 13 through 15 is a +1, etc., etc. And the reason I, of course, reduced my wisdom is because I wanted that coveted +3. Number 5, note attack values. The level progression chart for your character class lists the modified attack rolls needed to hit an armor class of 0. The attack roll you need to hit opponents of other AC ratings can be calculated from this value. It is usual to pre-calculate the modified attacks value required to hit AC 0 through 9 and record them in the matrix, see below. So we have this matrix right here, and that just gives you a middling list, but there is special list for every single class, as we can see. As we can see here on the magic user chart, the magic user is not gonna be hitting people, right? They only go up +2 after 6th level. They are not designed to be stabbing people. They have the capabilities to stab people with daggers, but they are not out there in the front lines. They're just not designed for it. Their hit dice is way too small. They have spells, and the spells are going to be much more impactful. So for us, this doesn't really matter that much. But of course, if you were to be another class, taking a look at the fighter, for example, we see that their to hit increases so much quicker. They hit +2 once they hit level 4, and then they etc, etc. They keep on getting that much better at it. As a friendly reminder to this system, there is the optional rules of using ascending armor class, not descending armor class. So you could have it where instead of rolling to hit an armor class of 0 and consulting a chart and figuring out all that math, you could just simply have it where AC is a high number, and when you roll to attack someone, you add a plus whatever to your roll. Pretty simple stuff. Number 6, note saving throws and class abilities. Record any special abilities possessed by your character as a result of their class, as well as your character saving throws. If your character has a spell book, ask your referee which spells are recorded in it. The referee may allow you to choose. I, of course, have seen a lot of people differ on that, whether they allow anyone to pick any spell that they want, or if you have to simply roll for it. For this case, I will just roll to see what spell I start off with. But mind you, there's a lot of spells that might not be perceived as good in the beginning. So it really comes down to the kind of a game that you're trying to run here. Once again, through the beauty of using an online system, it does it automatically for you. But if you were to be using pen and paper or some other type of system, then you would have to manually put these out here. And of course, the saves for your character can be found right there on your character progression table. For us, it lines up perfectly here. We have a 13 to our death save, a 14 to our wand, etc, etc. Consulting the Cleric and Magic User spell book here, we can see that at first level, we have 12 spells available. So I'm going to roll a d12 and see what we come up with. And we are given a 9. Let's consult what a 9 is, shall we? A 9 is Read Magic. Okay, we are not an offensive spellcaster, which I'm okay with. You know, everyone else can do the fighting for me. I'll be busy reading some magic. And just to get a read on how we can look at what type of spells give us, let's take a look at this. Read Magic, duration 1 turn, range the caster. By means of Read Magic, the caster can decipher magical inscriptions or runes as follows. The magical script of a scroll or arcane spells can be understood. The caster is then able to activate the scroll at any time in the future. Pretty dope. A spell book written by another arcane spellcaster can be deciphered. Really cool. And runes or other magical words inscribed on an object or surface can be understood. Very helpful if you are in a dungeon and you find something and you need to know what it is, or if you come across an enemy spellcaster, take their book. You know, there's just a lot of fun things to be had with this. Once the caster has read a magical inscription using Read Magic, they are thereafter able to read that particular writing without recourse to the use of the spell. Pretty cool. So on our character sheet here, I'm just going to simply add a little point in for the name, Read Magic. And I can just easily copy and paste in whatever. I could just have a reference for the page. And just like that, I've got it right there in my character sheet. Easy peasy. And now comes the most dreaded part of character creation. Roll hit points. Determine your character's hit points by rolling the die type appropriate to the chosen class. Modifiers for high or low con apply. Your character always starts with at least 1 HP regardless of the con modifier. Meaning that if you had a cyclic character, you have a -3 to your con, and you rolled a 1, you're not auto dead. This is not Traveler First Edition. You at the bare minimum have 1 HP. And of course that could happen to us because we are only a D4 class and we don't have a bonus to our con. So let's see what we roll up here. It's a shame too because we are at 12 con. If we had just one more, we'd have a +1 to this roll. We are a pathetic magic user, however, so let's see what we get. We got a 1. Haha. So noting here on our combat, we have HP 1 and max is 1. If we take any instance of damage at all whatsoever, we are dead. If we drop 10 feet, we are automatically dead. If something scrapes us, we're dead. We cannot get into anything at all whatsoever. We're going to be in for just a fun time of sitting in the back and not getting into any terrible danger. But there is an optional rule here. Rerolling 1s and 2s. If you roll for HP comes up 1 or 2 before applying a con mod, the referee may allow you to reroll. This is in order to increase the survivability of first level PCs. I personally am not going to reroll here, but I would strongly recommend it for a lot of people. You know, it is really unfortunate if you have the glorious epic fighter and they only have a 1 HP. That does feel a little bit lame. But, you know, that's part of the game, is the fact that there is this crazy, zany wackiness to it, and I'm going to live with the consequences for my character, but I do not recommend it for everybody. And number 8, for making our character, choose alignment. Decide whether your character is lawful, neutral, or chaotic, and note this on your character sheet. I'm going to go ahead and simply roll this. I'm going to say that on a d6, on a 1 through 3, we have a lawful character. On a 4 through 5, we have a neutral character, and on a 6, we have a chaotic. I think that's a perfectly fine way to do it. You can obviously just allow people to make whatever character they want. You can do whatever, but of course, they have to suffer the ramifications of their actions. So on the 1d6 to determine my alignment, I am actually chaotic. Ooh, that's scary. So I am not on the up and up. And I'm hoping that during this process, this is really highlighting the effects of rolling randomly here. You're not going to get what you want. And that's sort of the fun of the game, is you show up to the table and you don't know what you're going to come out of. But here we are. I've got this character who's this piddly magic user who's got no strength at all, but is super intelligent and is apparently chaotic. You know, that's just a fun time. Number 9, note known languages. Every character begins play knowing 1 or more languages, determined by the character's class. Characters with high intelligence may also choose additional languages. So we can see here on the languages for the magic user, we have alignment language and common. So we already started off with those two. But guess what? We are wrinkle brain here. We have more languages. So let's look at the chart to determine how many languages we have. And right there, it's spelled out for us. We have an additional 3 languages. That is dope. We have 5 languages in total. That's awesome. Here on player character languages, we can see here that there's a nice D20 table. So I'm going to roll 3D20 and I'm going to re-roll any that isn't a 20 to see what languages I've got. And let's see what the languages we're cooking up with here. Okay, wow, that's actually a crazy roll. But I will re-roll again, re-rolling one of those 17s. And we have a 5, 16, and 17. So in addition to our own language and our alignment language, we also have Elvish, Minotaur, and Ogre. Pretty cool. So I'm just going to note on my character sheet here all of the languages I have, and those could prove pretty useful later on. Number 10, buy equipment. Your character starts play with 3d6 times 10 gold pieces. You may spend as much of that money as you desire on equipment for your character's adventures, consulting the list in this book. Remember that your chosen class may restrict your use of some equipment. So for us, we're not getting any armor, and I'm not even going to bother picking up a weapon probably. Maybe I'll pick up a dagger if I've got enough money to spare. Alrighty, we've gotten some zany, wacky rolls today. Let's see what we get for our gold. We start off with 120 gold. That's actually pretty good. Something important to note when you are buying all that equipment for your character is if encumbrance is at your table. If there is no encumbrance optional rule at your table, then that's fine, buy whatever you want. But if you do have encumbrance in your games, then you do need to consider what you are using. If you're using encumbrance by armor type, you then have to consider, okay, maybe I don't want the heavier armor because I in fact want to be faster. Or, oh, I'm going to be able to carry more things and I don't care if we slow down the party. With our 120 gold, I'm actually not going to spend that much of it. And the reason for that is because I am going to be spending my own gold on some of my retainers for the adventure that we go on later. So for the instances of this creating the character video, I am only going to be buying a backpack and a few minor things that every adventurer should have. I'm going to buy some rations, and I'm going to buy some rope, I'm going to buy some sacks, and that's pretty much all. But of course, as we're looking at the weapons and armor here, we can see that if you are a class that does desire having weapons and armor, you can see how immediately that does become pretty pricey. If you want a longbow, guess what? That's 40 gold. That's quite a lot. If you do want that play mail, that's going to eat in heavy into your character. But, you know, are you okay with having less gold if it means you have higher AC? Probably. And there we go. I've got a couple of things, not really that concerned. What I'm really concerned about is fleshing out my retainers, because I've got all this gold and I don't need it. And I, more importantly, need people to soak up the hits for me. Now on number 11 for creating our character, note armor class. Now that you know what kind of armor your character has, or doesn't have in this case, record your character's armor class value, applying any adjustment for high or low dexterity. So yes, if you do have ACs, they are still affected by dexterity, which is awesome. You could in fact be this crazy awesome dexterous person wielding plate mail, and then you are ducking around, and when people do hit you, they're basically hitting your armor. That's really dope. We can see here on our chart, we have an AC of 9, unarmored 9, and this is of course using THAC0. But if we were to so choose, we can change that up to going to ascending armor class. And then we can see here that our armor class is actually 10, which is not good, mind you. An AC of 10 or an AC of 9, whichever system that you're using, those are both incredibly bad. If anybody attacks us, there's a pretty decent chance we get hit. And as a reminder, if we get hit, we are dead. And last and certainly not least is naming the character. Finally, choose a name for your character. You are now ready to adventure. Now, the design philosophy behind that is because you don't name your character and then start doing everything. Your character is named after everything that's relevant to them. What their stats are, what equipment do they have, what do they like. Our character, now that we know what they actually are, they are a magic user who is apparently sickly, as they've only got 1 HP, only 4 strength, not that great of any other stats, but they are wizened. But at the same time, our character is also chaotic. Why is that? Who is this character? Because our character actually has pretty decent stats in all of the mental capacities and only really bad stats in the strength. Maybe they were a noble, maybe they came from a high society, but maybe they had something afflicted to them. Maybe they spent all day inside reading books, but at the same time, they also have a pretty decent charisma, so this person at least knows how to interact with people. So I'm going to name our magic user Cargyle the Learned. And just like that, we've got our character sheet here. Giving it a glance over here, there is really nothing too important to note about our character. But for the majority of characters, you would have something listed in the weapons and in the combat related orientations. This character does not, but that is what it is. The only thing to note is, I totally skipped this part, is to note the percentage of XP. So normally you start off at the game at 0 XP and then you need XP to level up, but all classes can potentially get bonus XP. As we can see here on this list, prime requisite XP adjustments, we see that if you have the prime requisites for a class, you can gain a plus 5% XP, plus 10% XP, and if you are actually on the downside of things, you can actually lose XP, which is really bad. You never want to pick a class if you are losing XP because you're going to be so far behind everybody else. But for us, we don't need to worry about that. We are a magic user. Very simple here. We see that as a magic user, our prime requisite is intelligence. And guess what? We have that sweet, sweet 18 intelligence, meaning that we meet our prime requisite for getting bonus XP. So I'm just going to note there on my character sheet, I've got a plus 10% to my XP. Really cool. If we earn 1,000 XP, I earned 1,100 XP. That's fantastic. And that's that for the character creation. Very simple stuff. Of course, it was very long-winded when I was talking about it all, but I promise you, when you are sitting down to create characters for this game, it is super simple. It practically does it for you. There is not much there. There really isn't too much to note. At level 1, your character may have a whole bunch of different abilities, but once you know the abilities of certain classes, then you're not going to sweat it too much. For example, being the magic user really doesn't have too much going on, except for the fact that they get a spell, but, you know, that spell, depending on what it is, really isn't that big of a deal. In our case, it really isn't, but of course, there's still some fun things to be had here. Our character sheet may be looking a little empty, but hey, that's the territory of being a magic user. In the next part, I will be covering combat. And during that combat, this magic user is not going out alone, of course. They're going to have some retainers by their side. And through those retainers, we'll see a little bit how melee combat works as well. I can't wait to take Cargyle out for a spin to see what he is going to be getting up to. And I can't wait for you all to join me. So go ahead and tell me, did you have a fun time rolling up a random character in Old School Essentials? Or are you more in line of wanting more of a stat array? Do you think that 3d6 is too harsh? Maybe you want to add a 4d6, drop the lowest. And are you going to make your players roll down the line for their stats? Or are they going to be able to roll and place those stats wherever they want? Go ahead and tell me all those things because I want to know. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you for watching. Thanks for listening. And thank you to my amazing patrons. You guys are absolutely incredible. And I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.